Logan, Marco, and Treacle walked out of the die portal and found themselves at the entrance of the Blasted Barrows, the southernmost dungeon on Arborea. Rough-hewn stones were piled into an archway set in the side of a grassy knoll. The Vralcag Hills were a low series of ridges between the two southern rivers that ran off the edges of the realm in dramatic waterfalls. Flat worlds might defy physics, but they sure were pretty. The wind brought the perfume of the dry grassy plain, along with some market noises from the nearby town. The distant cries of street vendors hawking their wares. The clang of a hammer falling against steel. Vralcag was the only settlement in the realm outside of Shadowcroft Castle, a place that catered to the professors and staff that called Arborea home. Though there was nothing that said students couldn't visit as well. Marco certainly spent more than his fair share of hours slumming around in the taverns there. Professor Arquetta the Hellgazer stood with her pink gloves off, eating a triangular pastry. The gloves matched her headscarf, which kept her snake hair under wraps. Her dress and shoes were also pink, as were the frames of her dark sunglasses. Gorgon eyes did terrible things to flesh, or so Logan had read. Arquetta had taught one of their intro classes the year before, Underground Feng Shui, maximizing your dungeon for murder. One of the few classes Marco genuinely excelled at. Despite having a powerful class, Dark Muse, that could wreak havoc on a raiding party, Marco tended to lean toward art and beauty over functionality and practicality. The Gorgon daintily finished off the pastry and dabbed the edges of her mouth with a rose-colored napkin. "Hello, gentlemen. You were almost late. Not something I would have expected from the Terrible Twelfth, now that you are the toast of the town." "I believe the term is the town's toasted," Marco said. "Right, Steve?" Steve's joints squeaked and clattered in agreement. Arquetta raised a plucked eyebrow. "Really? You drink, Marco? I never would have guessed." The satyr didn't miss a beat. "Goataholic. I can get treatment for the booze, but my goat problem is chronic," she sighed. "Come now, Logan and friends. The other students are already in the Barrow's entry room. I have to say, I'm very excited about this class. And what do you think of the title? Best Friends Forever, Your Minions and You. I know Euless hates it, but I enjoyed enough for the both of us." She'd called Rockhart by his first name. Logan and his friends had long suspected the two were an item, and that suspicion had been confirmed during his summer internship with the Rector Prime. Rockhart never came out and said as much, of course, but Logan had spent enough time with the angry gargoyle to see how frequently Professor Hellgazer paid him office visits. There were other little things, too. The way Rockhart would soften when she was around. He didn't soften much, like a boulder swaddled in a piece of velvet, but soften he did. There was also the fashion to consider. Rockhart was oddly infatuated with clothes, but Logan couldn't figure out if that was Professor Hellgazer rubbing off on him, or if he'd always been that way. Either way, they often dressed to match when they were together, which was kind of adorkable. Definitely the odd couple, those two. But sometimes those were the relationships that had the legs to last. Logan and company followed the professor down into the dungeon. The Blasted Barrows was one of Logan's favorite dungeons on Arborea. Not as good as some of the swamp locations, but 1,000 times better than the mountainous dungeons or the sand-blasted desert dungeons. The worn stone steps, slick with moss, led out into a natural cavern with rough stone walls and high ceilings, studded with cobalt stalactites. With the jutting stalagmites that rose from the floor, the entry room always made Logan think of a dragon's maw. The air was surprisingly warm, insulated by hanging moss, and pools of stagnant water dotted the floor. The cavernous entryway connected to a tunnel lined by crumbling gray support columns. Nooks carved into the walls held ancient sarcophagi. A tomb, one meant for royalty. The design was perfect for liches or undead revenants. Honestly, Logan loved it. The place conjured images of Frodo and Middle-earth, bringing a smile to his face.